I'm Ed Parcaut, your host of Inner Edison. What I'd like you to take away from today's show is our greatest growth comes from our greatest failures. Today's guest is Jocelyn Stewart. Let's welcome her and get to know her story. Jocelyn, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So I know who you are, but my listeners don't know who you are. So let's talk a little. So you're right now, you're an attorney, and where are you based out of?
My main office is based out of Tacoma, Washington.
Okay. And so it's background. How did you become an attorney? I know you're a veteran. So let's go through the little bit of your story and then we'll get into your business part.
Sure. So I was really first on active duty for any meaningful period of time after I went to law school. I commissioned through ROTC for my undergrad, but I requested that the Army allow me to defer my time in and to allow me to be an educational delay so I could go to law school on my own dime. And then I applied. So I did that at LSU in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and then applied to come back onto active duty, but as a judge advocate. And so I did that between 2004 and 2012. And then I transitioned to private practice.
And for what I understand, they don't normally allow you to do that, right?
Right. I think, so some folks commission through like a funded legal education program, which is great. And I think they only accept maybe about 25 people a year. I wasn't necessarily sure that I would make the mark. And that was going to require me to do at least 2 to 5 years on active duty before the Army would pick up that tab. And then you would owe more time in for the education that they provided. So I figured might as well try for the educational delay, which I did. And I'm not sure how many people were chosen that year, but I think it was somewhere in the ballpark of about 20 or 30 also.
So you were very smart at what you did. Did you always want to be an attorney?
Always. Or at least from the time I was 5, I knew I wanted to be a judge.
Why?
And then,
there has to be a story there. I mean, most people don't know at 5 what they want to do. You know, I thought I was going to be a dairyman, but I woke up. So.
Right. I think for me, it's hard for me to remember back as a 5-year-old, other than just knowing that I had this awareness that I wanted to do it. I think I often would get into debates with my parents about what I thought was fair, kind of just always really drawn to a sense of fairness. And that if I were the one in charge, if I were the judge, I'd be the one to be able to decide what was fair. So I think that's probably where it was born from. Always sort of having this idea of what needs to be right. And then, on the playground as a kid, I remember sort of arbitering disputes. Okay, come to me. You tell me hey, you go over there. I mean, literally, I'm on the elementary school playground and people are telling me their side of a dispute. Okay, well, now you go to the swings, and bring Johnny over. Now, Johnny, you tell me your side. And then I would sort of, why they listened to me, I have no idea. But
maybe you were fair.
Maybe I was drawn to it for sure.
Sounds that way. Yeah, I had no idea. I did not know I was going to be in the mortgage industry when I was a kid. I thought I was going to go in the medical field, which I did, and then realized I liked business better on the other side. And that's why I do what I do now.
Sure. It was really a surprise to me at how much I actually ended up liking business. It wasn't something that I studied in school, thought I would be drawn to at all. Obviously was very drawn to military service, but I think part of it for me was my thirst for efficiency. I think a lot of us who've served have certainly seen systems and programs and methods that we thought maybe we could do better. Right. And wasting time is a heartache for most people, right? Heartburn. So I was surprised when I transitioned to active duty how much I actually really, really enjoyed the business part of running a firm, which, as I understand it, for a lot of lawyers is really where they don't want to go into private practice. And lawyers are historically kind of known as not being the best folks for business practice, which is why a lot of firms just don't succeed.
Well, I mean, I think that's a lot, even with doctors and other people going private practice. They didn't really realize what they get into and what you have to do besides do what you want to do. And then you got to run a business and make sure all the numbers are paid and everything. So you were in the military, you transitioned out and you specialize in a certain, for veterans, right? That's what certain type of law.
Right, exactly. And so when I was looking, I knew I didn't want to stay on active duty. It actually kind of came up a little bit suddenly, but the opportunity presented itself to get out and to go do something else. And so as I was looking around at what I might want to do, I started applying, to federal jobs, and kind of realizing that where those jobs were available was just not a place I wanted to raise kids. New York City, New Jersey, where there were big U.S. attorney offices where I might, have some capability of trying cases. And so when I finally decided, it was actually something I just kind of looked into. There had been a civilian attorney who practices court-martial defense, which is what I do now, goes into military courts, but is not in uniform, is not associated with the military, and is privately hired by service members who are get accused of crimes. And I knew him. I had tried cases against him, and when I reached out to him to ask him, it was really, am I going to starve? If I try this, if I might put in the door, and if I try to do this, is there enough business out there that I can make a go of it, that I can be successful? And actually, when I had that conversation with him, he was very gracious and said, not only do I think that you can, but have I got a deal for you? And he offered to make me enough counsel to his firm. And so essentially his website was receiving, so many requests for consultation, and that he would feed me those referrals and those consultation requests, so that then if I landed the client, that client would become mine. And so I did that for the first year.
Now, do you only practice law in a certain state, or you practice law in many states?
So I am licensed where I originally went to law school, which is in Louisiana. I sat for the Louisiana bar after I completed my law school requirements. In order to practice in any military court, the only requirement as of right now is that you be licensed and in good standing in any state. So they don't care where, just so long as you're in good standing and you've passed a bar. And that whatever that particular state's requirements are to stay current, that you comply with that, and then you stay current.
I just bring that up because for our industry, we have to be licensed in every state. Plus, each individual has to be licensed in each state that they want to do business in. So you having that little I don't want to say luxury, but the fact that the military sees, just as long as you're licensed in that one place, that they allow you to practice everywhere, that just allows you to do so much more.
I'm sorry, you're kind of cutting in and out. Can you try that one again?
I'm sorry, that must be your. I'm just making sure I'm on my good Wi-Fi. I'm on my hard line, so let's try this again. All right, so my question was, it was not really a question, it was just a statement that in my industry, we have to be licensed in each state, plus the individuals that work for us has to be licensed in each state too. So there's a lot of requirements. So it's just kind of like what you just said, but with the fact that you work with the military, you don't have to do that. And I just thought that opened up the world to you, to allow you to do practice law in all these different courtrooms all over the country to help vets and active duty. Did you get that?
Okay, so I think I heard you. I'm going to try to answer, because it may be my. So I'm going to try to switch over to a different Wi-Fi while I'm going to try to answer this. But in addition to certainly the requirements that I had to be on the legal side of things, I definitely had to pursue and find out what would be the requirements for my business license, right? So I really had to research and figure out what those things were that would be required. Tacoma, where I am, has its city requirements, then I've got state of Washington requirements, and I've got all those sorts of things to make sure that I'm,
So the question I had when I was stating that in my industry, we have to have licensing in each state, and everybody that works for us has to have that licensing in each state in order to do business there. It sounds to me like, because you work with the court system, you just said through the military, as long as you're licensed in one place, you can practice law in all those other different places. So it opens you up to where veterans and people who need you can get your help, not just because I'm sorry, I can't help you, I'm not in that state. And that just makes it so much better for veterans. That's all I was really stating.
Absolutely. And that's definitely true.
And then you brought back, you were saying how you have to be licensed. So are you licensed to do law in Washington besides Louisiana?
Well, actually, very recently I waved
Okay.
in, and today I got in the mail when I came into my office my official license for Washington. So, as part of a new avenue of my business, I decided it was time to go ahead and to become licensed here in Washington State. I actually will try my first case in a Washington court in November.
And this is non-judicial military court kind of thing, right?
Well, it's actually related.
Oh,
So I think it's an easy pivot. So I had a previous military client who was falsely accused by his now former spouse. And it was so very blatantly false that the military actually, about 4 days before trial, dismissed all charges against him. And as a result of that investigation and what was done to him in particular, he's lost a lot. It's affected him emotionally. And so we have filed a civil suit that will go to trial here in Pierce County for defamation for the false allegation. So although it's not specifically a military case, he is a military client who has been harmed, and we are taking it to a civilian Washington court to resolve those issues.
yeah. And I don't want to get into particulars, but I'm just glad that people are fighting against those false accusations that can easily be occurred in the military to get their way or whatever. I'm not saying they're all that way, but I'm just glad that there's one on each side to protect everybody. So let's talk about when you transferred over. I mean, because you didn't, but you're running your own business. Was it exactly what you thought you were going to get into? Or, I mean, because this show's about, your Edison moments, things that our greatest accomplishments come out of our greatest weaknesses or our greatest failures, whatever that is. And we have them. They all don't have to be amazing, but I'm just saying there's certain things along the way that as a business person, you're like, oh man, I wish I would have known that before.
Right. No, it definitely was not what I thought. When I went into it, I had this, obviously I knew that I was going to be having a stream of potential clients coming in, which felt really great. And I had that for a year, but I definitely had my approach was very naive, right? I had this idea that if I worked the hardest in my industry and if I did the best possible work, then I would be successful, right? Financially, that I would have the draw of the clients that I wanted to be, to be marketing in such a way that I was receiving what it is that I thought I was putting out, right? And that was entirely naive, right? Like one of the very biggest lessons that I learned very early on was that it didn't matter how good I was at what I did. It mattered how good my Google rankings were. It mattered what, was my website flashy enough? Was I being seen in the places where people were obtaining the work and obtaining those leads? Because I think I definitely, I don't want to say subscribed to, but I had sort of assumed, and I think wrongly, that marketing had become so new, right? And even in Louisiana, where I learned and practiced law and learned the professional rules of responsibility, we definitely, they frowned on marketing. And everyone sort of got their business by, oh, well, that's the law firm of, Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, like the very established firm that's been around for forever. And that's who you go to because that's just who you go to. It didn't really breed a lot of comfort for any of the newcomers, right? It sort of wanted to feed this idea that you shouldn't be out there just hanging a shingle, because if you are, you're going to be committing malpractice. And so you need to go through the tried and true, system of being an associate somewhere, and then a junior associate and junior partner and making partner, and sort of those models that don't inspire a lot of people to become entrepreneurs, right? And so I think marketing and direct access through websites and that sort of thing has really opened it up in good and bad ways, right? For people who are doing legitimately good and quality work to be able to have their name out there and to be on par with some of the more, quote, established types of organizations. But I definitely, I did not realize the effort that I needed to make in terms of getting those clients, because I had this sort of sense that the referrals, right, just the people who knew of me would say, oh, well, call Jocelyn. But it's a big market, and you have to set yourself apart, and marketing was really vital.
Yeah, because wasn't it a few? I mean, that was what you just said. You couldn't advertise, but I mean, wasn't it where you couldn't advertise at all in any state? I mean, like, was it
Years ago.
67? Yeah, yeah. So I mean, you couldn't even
Yeah, right.
say that
And
I'm a
Louisiana
law
was one of
firm
the
and we.
silver.
Oh.
Right.
And that's, I mean, because how else are people supposed to find you? I mean, it's, luckily that's changed and you can do the marketing, but then also now you guys are up against what we are up against all the time is trying to get that information out there. So how did you get through that process and get your information out there? Did you hire somebody? Did you just go it alone? How did you do it?
So it was definitely a process. So for that first year, and that was something that I had kind of negotiated into my agreement with that individual was, hey, look, I thank you so much for this opportunity to be affiliated with your firm, but it's also really important to me that I start to establish who I am and my own site. And they were fine with that. And so it was like the first website was just kind of an abomination, but it was a self kit, created just to sort of put something out there. Because when I first started off, I call myself, all the time, I'm not a used car salesman. It was a little bit uncomfortable for me when those clients would say, well, why should I hire you? Why are you special? What have you done? And the website, at least initially, the self-created one, was just a place where people could go and kind of see a more functional resume, right? A little bit of history of the cases I'd tried, because I personally didn't feel comfortable saying this is how great I am, right? But I could put it on a site, and then it was generating some traffic. People were getting on it and looking at it. About almost exactly a year to the day that I had come on with that other firm as their of counsel, I found out that I was no longer going to be affiliated with them. Apparently, it just wasn't. People were contacting the firm and wanting me specifically, and the person in charge of the firm wanted obviously control over which cases went to whom, and so I guess it became burdensome enough that he said, like I just don't think we're going to continue on. No hard feelings. You're great. You're going to go do great things. And that was really a crossroads because that's like a year in. Um, and it was definitely a panic moment of, okay, so this is the time that I'm either going to double down, right? I'm going to really put something into this business, or I'm going to go try to find, a federal job as a GS lawyer on one of the bases. Because it was very eye-opening, like, oh gosh, that this could happen so quickly. And so I was happy that I at least had established for that year a URL, my own website that I was going to be working on. And it was at that point that I started hiring. I was interviewing folks and looking at different companies that I wanted to build my website that was really going to kind of take me forward in that process. Was very grateful to find a veteran-owned business who designed my site, and it's still largely the same site platform, managed by different search engine optimization companies, but the same site. And then I love my site. So it looks different from a lot of the others. A lot of the folks in my industry use one particular company, and I tend to think that when you do that, it can kind of stifle creativity, and they can kind of start to look more like each other. But that was when it was like, oh man, what am I going to do now? But I'm really glad that we took the chance and moved forward.
I'm sure a lot of your clients are too. So you're doing so most of your clients come through the website for the military. I mean, because that's where I'm. So for me, I was in the military. So I've never been court-martialed, thank God. But if you go through that, most people don't realize it's different than. So I know we're talking about business, but I'll bring it back in a second. But in the military, you're guilty, then you have to prove yourself innocent versus elsewhere you're supposedly innocent, and then you have to, they have to prove you guilty. So it's important to get somebody from the outside who doesn't just is in the system. For me, that's what I would think. So I would think it would be amazing to have somebody from the outside to come in who knows the military rule, but is not part of the military.
I think that's largely what attracts a lot of our clients. There is a fear that if you are within the system, even though the military gives everybody their own lawyer, there's certainly a fear that that person may not fight as hard for them as somebody who's independent, because maybe that person's worried about their next job. I'm very proud that I defended for 3 years in uniform, and I can say with certainty that I never pulled a punch. Some of the best advice I ever got from one of my first jobs in the military was, take care of your client and the rest will take care of itself, in terms of your career progression. And I think I was very fortunate that I fought very hard battles and offended probably a lot of people in doing my job. Maybe my co-counsels didn't, not co-counsels, but the attorneys across the aisle from me didn't appreciate it. But the higher ups were very considerate and, the right kind of people who would say, one became a general, and I remember having a conversation with them, and he said, "You're teaching them more in that week of a court martial than I can have anybody try to train them, in a year worth of exercise. Keep at it, keep thundering away." And, he was, the other side, but he got it and saw value in it. And so I think I was fortunate that way.
I mean, we've all seen JAG, so we know that there's a hierarchy, and sometimes they have. So if you watch that, then you think, well, my attorney is controlled by this one who controls the whole thing. You might as well get somebody from the outside, and because it would help you. But let's get back to your business.
Sure.
All right, so you built the website, got that going. How long you been on your own? How many years, if you don't mind me?
Going on 10.
Well, yeah. All right. And then, so what have you seen over the last 10 years differently in your business that you've had to change and grow with? That's my question, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think definitely as I gained, hierarchy on Google, right, as I was getting more leads, I finally grew out of a place where I could not be the only one to answer the phones. I could not be the only person there. I feel like I approached my business in the same way I kind of approached motherhood. There was a lot of, any new mom or any pregnant to be mom is bombarded with all of these advertisements and signs and symbols of what, being a mom looks like, everything from wipes that are getting warmed to, every kind of like doohickey, anything. And I thought, like, how do I know I'm going to need these things, right? I don't want to feel this pressure to go out and get the best systems and spend all this money when maybe this isn't something I'm even going to need. I want to know that I have a need for it. So, okay, I've got my baby here. It's not always fun to like be in the kitchen and not have a place to set him down. I'm going to get a seat, right? Okay, now I have this need. I'm going to go out. I'm going to buy the thing that I need. I approached my business in very much the same way because I didn't want to feel compelled or pressured to go out and buy the most standard, state of the art microphone for voice conferencing or, camera to do what, obviously laptops and everything has improved greatly over the last 10 years, but I just did. I'm a very thrifty person and I didn't want to be throwing money out there to try to be creating an image to attract that kind of a person. So I grew very, very slowly. Right. And almost to a point, almost to a breaking point, like emotionally, because when you're answering all your own calls and you're hungry for business and I always felt like as an entrepreneur, you didn't know when the next call was going to come necessarily, or at least you had that discomfort, that worry, it may not come. And so you're more inclined to take anything and everything, even if maybe it might not be the best fit for personality for a client and an attorney. Maybe it's going to really stretch me to the breaking point to be doing down and out. I was doing down and outs to Korea, down and outs to Japan. I mean, I was flying all over the world, literally, and becoming quite exhausted and still maintaining my phones and still maintaining all the leads coming in from the website. I was doing everything. And I said, okay, I need help. Right. And so in the same way, I kind of grew. I did grow very slowly, but very intentionally and probably too slowly. Right. So I finally, once I got to that breaking point, looked out and found, a paralegal to do some contract labor. Right. Hey, I have this particular need. Can you do hourly for me? And kind of grew from there.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with growing slow. I mean, it depends on your industry because your industry, I don't think changes that much, right? You guys haven't had a disruptor come into it, and I mean, you had, like LegalZoom or those things, but that's totally different. But but not with what you do. But like in our industry, we've been disrupted. The real estate industry is next. There's so many different things that they're coming in, changing the way we're doing it. However, so the fact that you grew slower, there's nothing wrong with that, because too many people grow too fast. And that's like us. I hate growing our company during a refinance boom or any of those kind of things, because once it's over, then you got to look back and go, okay, who don't we need? Right. And so I'd never liked that. This last year and a half of what we went through was, I mean, we had such a huge amount of loans to do, and there just wasn't enough people, no matter how hard we work. Right. So I don't like that. So I always grow during the slow times. That's how I like to grow, than to have enough extra people for when that gets busy. You just pick up a little bit. If you don't get everything, that's okay. Right.
Right. No, exactly. Exactly. And when I first started off, I had this, again, you'd asked the question about things that I wish I knew or kind of were not expected. My approach was that I didn't want to grow so big that I couldn't answer my own phones and be completely available to my clients. I think if I were still doing that, I'd be in the, a psych ward, to be honest, because at some point you have to, even as an entrepreneur, establish that I need to be able to give the right level of connection, right, to my clients, to my customers. But I also need to reserve some for me, right? And so it's okay that I'm not going to answer my own phone at some point, because I'm still going to be giving that very personalized attention to the people who need it.
Right. And a lot of entrepreneurs, they have to get to the point where they understand they need to do what they do best and let everybody else handle everything else. Right. And that, for a lot of us, you were talking about, it's your baby. Your company is usually your baby, and you don't trust anybody to touch it. Just like most new moms don't touch anybody right. I mean, it just
Exactly.
yeah. We can't go. I can't leave the baby. No, yes, we can. Anyway, same thing with the business. I mean, you have to get to a point, by the time you have a second, third kid, they're like, oh, a dog food bowl, no big deal. Right. So you eventually you grow your business, and you finally realize, I have to let go. I have to let these people handle things. And you have, you pass military, about SOPs and all those things, putting those things in place. So, and the reason they have those things in the military is because there's so many people change so often. To go through the training of that next person so much, it just doesn't work. So you have to have something they can read and understand where to pick up. So I understand.
I think it was 5 years before I took my first disconnected actual vacation. And it was definitely too long, right? I'd gone too long by just keeping my grips onto everything without realizing it. I wish that I had heeded the words of, I remember this very senior paralegal when I was working in Germany, Master Sergeant Angela Moore. I was very reluctant to take leave. And she said, ma'am, no matter how hard you work, the sun will rise tomorrow if you are not here. And you need to realize your place in the universe, right? And I think it's very important for entrepreneurs to also realize the same, right? That you have to, in order to feed your business in the best way, you also have to feed yourself. And by doing that, by setting up those systems to ensure that you can, right? It's exactly what you said.
Right. Well, I'm glad you agree with me. Not everybody does. All right. So looking back, we've talked about things that changed and how so let's forget I said looking back, but I want to change. Going forward, what's going for you? What's your plans going forward? Did you write a book yet? Do you have a book? Is there a plan for that?
Right. So I've already published one of my books. And the second book is going to be coming out. One? So the first one, and it's kind of part of the same series right now that I'm focusing on, which is more instruction materials to be able to help people who are in uniform or out of uniform to do what I do. So the name of the book is Shaping the Battlefield. And the first one is How to Draft Motions in Military Practice. As I have practiced in this industry for almost 18 years, I've definitely realized that there has not been much, if any, focus on written advocacy, right? We do all these classes, we stand up, we learn how to give speeches, we learn how to, cross-examine, we know how to direct, but we have really, as the core, right, practice field, have done a pretty dismal job of teaching attorneys how to write and advocate to a judge for a particular, remedy, whether it's dismissing a charge or keeping out evidence or making sure a piece of evidence that's critical for your case is going to come in. The legal, like the framework for how to actually do that. I realized, I can't get frustrated with people who don't know how to do something if I'm not going to maybe be part of trying to help it. And so I took some time and kind of dismantled my own process for how to do that. And I put it into a book, kind of a how-to. So the first part of shaping the battlefield is how to write those motions. In about the next, I'm hoping, a week or two, pre-orders are going to be available for my second book, which is a very related book, which is now that you've written it, now you need to go into court and you need to litigate it. So it's how to litigate motions in military practice. And I'm working on book 3 right now. So.
And some people would say, why are you giving away your secret sauce? Right.
Right. And I've had people ask me that, why are you trying to teach people to do the things that you do? My actual goal is to teach myself out of a job, which as an entrepreneur probably sounds a little strange, but I served. I feel very strongly and very passionately that there's a reason that the military is supposed to be able to give you the resources to defend yourself, even against them. And that seems maybe counterintuitive to a lot of people, but I just feel like we need to be doing a better job of furnishing every service member and every veteran with those types of resources, and that they shouldn't have to buy justice. And that sounds really terrible. But often that's the case, right? I mean, you see all these big headline cases where because somebody has a lot of money and a lot of pull, that they're able to hire this, fancy attorney and maybe get a very different outcome than somebody who wouldn't. And even though that's what I do, even though I'm a hired gun, right? I've even called that, I was called a hired shark by an Air Force judge once. Thank you, sir. I'll take that as a compliment. But I think it's wrong.
Did he say what type of shark?
No.
Yes, I mean there's a lot of nice sharks. They're not all mean. So
well, since it was put in a sentence with I expect to never see you in my courtroom again, I'm going to take it as he wasn't
kind of a Mako.
Yeah. He said specifically something to the effect of I thought this was going to be a simple case. This was definitely a mic drop moment. And it was after, of course, not on the record. We're all packing up. We're going to go leave. And I said, well, sir, if you see my name on your docket again, you should just assume it's not going to be a simple case. And I walked away. So it was a pretty contentious case. But.
Yeah. Well, I want to get back to the fact that you're giving the information because there's only one of you, right? You can't duplicate. You can't help 3 people if you have to in court at the same time. You need other people who can advocate for veterans and people. And then when I see veterans, the moment you get in the service, you've been there, you're a veteran to me. So basically you need that help. You need other people to be able to do this because I think this is a niche field that you're in. And, they always say in the business world that riches are in the niches. That's one of the little quotes. And it's true, but you can't focus on everything. You can't be good. You can't be good at everything. So you need to focus. And the fact that you're helping these people help more veterans, I really appreciate that so much.
No, thank you. I feel really strongly about it. And ultimately, if I cannot take every case, right? I'm one person. And even though my law firm is growing and we've got more attorneys and we're able to make a bigger impact, ultimately, I would rather create an army of people who can do what I do because, and there's a lot of political reasons why obviously a lot of this is being highlighted right now, but it really is the deck stacked against folks. And I want to try to level that playing field. I really do.
Well, I appreciate everything you do for the veterans and coming on today and talking about your business and where it's at and where it's growing. And I would like to have you back sometime in the future after your next book and then the 26th book that you put out there or whatever. Because I'm sure the fact that you're doing the books, I mean, the books itself, if you hired an attorney in your associate in your law firm, you can say, here, read these. I don't have time to show you everything, but here's your manual to get through what I need you to get through. Read these 2 books, get back to me if you have any questions. Right.
Sure.
I mean, with it. Yeah.
Right. And that brings up an interesting question, right? Because I think a lot of firms are the traditional model where, and this is a different choice that an entrepreneur makes, right? Am I going to only bring on people who have a certain threshold level of experience, or am I going to be sending some of my energy to just kind of training up people? I have made the decision in large part that I am not going to be training litigators. If they're going to be practicing under my name and doing this on my behalf, there has to be a great deal of experience that you bring to the table. And that's part of the reason that I've had to grow so slowly, is because by the time that people reach the level of experience that I find that's really helpful in litigation, especially, and like you said, in this very tiny niche, most of them have gotten to a point where they are going to head all the way to retirement, right? And they're going to hit that 20 years. And by that point, they have become less sharp in their litigation skills because they've moved much more into management. And so there's kind of this sweet spot where very few people hit, right? And so I'm either being sought for a job from people who have maybe 2 to 3 years, or it's the retiree who's done 20 years and maybe hasn't tried a case in 12 years. That's another one of the realities of growing slowly, is because I don't want to compromise on experience level, and I don't want to necessarily, because there's only one of me and I have all these other projects that I'm doing, to be spending that time to be, training up associates. It's just not in my business model.
Right. And the most important point here is the fact that you have a model and you're sticking to it, and that and that's what a lot of business owners do not do. They don't have a business plan, SOP. They don't have any of that kind of stuff. They just go in, they think they have, or in my head, I have what it is. I have my budget in my head. I have everything. No, it doesn't work that way. You need other people to help you there, because there's something you're not going to remember. There's something that is going to come around there that's going to affect your business. And you need these systems in place to make that a long-term business.
No, for sure. And I think, that's interesting that you bring that up, because I actually, when I started off, I didn't have a business plan. I didn't have one at all. I felt like in large part, I tripped into very good decisions, right? The company that I found to do my website, I still, refer other people to, because they're just fantastic. And then the company that did my, when I decided to do video marketing, right? The first video that I made, looked around and found a very hungry young company. And I was their very first legal brand video. Well, they have since then gone on to be, they have set all these records in business for growing and doing amazing things. And now they only do legal brand videos. And I was their first, right? So, and they were wonderful about, I remember they were at a business conference for lawyers, and they said, hey, they knew that I was going to be there. They asked if I could stop by. I said, sure, I'm going to be kind of next door in one of the other, breakouts, but I'll stop by. And I go into the back of this pretty large room, and at the front of it is all of a sudden I hear my voice. They were showing my video, and then all of a sudden they say, and there she is, and all these chairs turn, and I'm standing there not realizing that they were going to be showing my video. But they've gone on to just do fantastic work. And again, I feel so lucky that I found them, that I vetted them, and that they were the ones I put my faith in, and they've gone on to do such great things.
Wow. Your journey along the way for all of us as business owners, it's amazing who you meet, who you might not want to meet again, who you're so happy to, there's so many of those things that come across that we just, as we learn and grow our business, that you just don't have a clue. Nobody can get you ready for, and you have to just do it and stop worrying about it. If you're going to start a business, make a plan, get going. Don't wait. Because I know a lot of people, well, I'm waiting for this before no, don't do that. Just go. Because it doesn't matter if it's today or if it's a month from now. You're going to run into the same things. So.
Right. Well, and with the web now and with YouTube videos, I'll tell you, when I first started off and I was slow because I didn't have, the clientele or the demand for it that I do now. I spent hours just on Google and finding YouTube videos. Right. And people still think this is hilarious. I know my accountants do, but I did all of my billing and everything that off of an Excel spreadsheet. And I learned Excel off of YouTube videos. I Googled everything, and but it's just astonishing, all of the free resources that are available to help you to do the things that you want to do. Every question you could imagine as a future or planning entrepreneur, I promise there's resources that
Right.
are available, and you
Well,
have to vet them like anything else, but it's amazing what's out there.
yeah, it's a different world than it was in the 90s and the 80s, and even, I mean, night and day difference. You can find anything now. You want to start a podcast? Easy, everything's out there. But the only issue that I run into in my industry is 90% of the information that's put out there is wrong.
Oh no. Oh, that's
Yeah.
too bad.
Yeah, because
Sure.
I can't. No, that's wrong. So, I mean, and that's the thing, our industry changes so quickly, and things change because things where you guys have new laws put in it, but most of the time it's the same thing. It's the law that's been around forever, unless there's a new case that just changed that, right?
Yes and no. Actually, I'm now practicing, I think, under my fourth or fifth version of the same statute, because Congress is constantly, tinkering with it. And so
Oh, really?
we have to definitely have to stay current on, the sex assault war that's being waged within the military. But I think, at least in terms of the resources that I'm speaking to more that are available out there, are, um, marketing. And, one of the other things I remember getting a YouTube video that taught me was how to put, when I'm writing my blog posts, which is, a big part of my practice and how I make Google happy, right? By continuing to feed the website with more content. I had seen these hyperlinks. I didn't know how to do that, right? And so I sat down and Googled it and taught myself how to do hyperlinks. And I know the attorneys who come on board, and because they have a writing obligation for the site as well, they didn't know how to do that. And so I've taught them how to do it. And I think I've even sent them a YouTube video link, hey, check this out. This is what we need to be doing. You need to put these links in here. So just all those small things that can seem overwhelming. I'm a big list creator. It's like, okay, what are the things I need to figure out how to do this? And then I'm going to do my research. I'm going to figure this out because right now it's me. It's an operation of one, was for at least the first 5 years.
Right. Now, did you do any videos on YouTube for your business?
I do. Yeah. I have my
Okay.
own YouTube channel for my site that I did all through that same marketing company. We did that initial legal brand video. That was kind of the signature, how I wanted, people to know and understand who I am. And then I did a series of 24 FAQ videos with the same company.
Okay. Do you keep doing them though?
I need to.
Okay.
And in fact, I need to reach back out to those guys and say, okay.
The
I
other
think
thing
it's
you can
time
do,
again.
and I'm just going to throw this out here, is it's what I've learned, is do lives on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. That automatically goes to your YouTube channel, and you can just do one a week or two a week, depending on what. And this, go through a certain thing, and then it's automatically there. There's not all this, going through the whole thing.
Production.
Exactly.
Right.
It's so much easier. And like the software we're using right now, StreamYard, you can just do it. You can actually record it through StreamYard and then just upload it with all the little extra stuff on it, easier than, because you can put all the different, like the Inner Edison logo up there. You can put all these different things on here. I use this for my real estate jerky. I use this for my Helping the Brave podcast. I use this for Inner Edison. So it's easy to do that kind of stuff through just the software that they come up with across multiple platforms, which we were not able to do a couple of years ago. So that's the different changes. Yeah.
Right.
All right. Jocelyn, I want to thank you for being on the show today. I appreciate it.
No, thanks, Ed. Thank you for having me.
Oh, anytime. And again, if you enjoyed today's show, I hope you like it, subscribe it, and, come here again each week. We drop the show on Tuesdays. And so again, thank you for showing up today. And Jocelyn, thank you for being here.